If you've been around the channel a while, you know that I like the last few releases from Scuf, the Reflex Pro for the PlayStation 5, the Instinct Pro for the Xbox, and I was a little bit unsure what to think with this PC-only release other than, damn, 11 additional inputs that you can bind, these 5 G buttons, these 2 Sax buttons on the side, and then 4 buttons on the rump or tuchus, 2 of which can be removed. Kind of weird that the other 2 can't be. But then you realize this controller has a feature list that touches your ankles, Omron mechanical switches, swappable faceplate that's also rubberized and soft touch, killer on-off mechanical triggers, and some tiny sculpted bumpers that work in conjunction with those triggers, unlike any controller I've ever seen. More on that later. Super fast speeds, both wired and wireless to the PC, actually identical speeds. Scuf has doubled the warranty from 6 months to a year, hallelujah. And if I don't just run that sweet little controller captain intro, I'm gonna keep jaw-jacking and lip-smacking about why this is my favorite Scuf controller to date. There are timestamps or chapters in the description, but hang out with me and we'll have a vision, an envision of the future of Scuf.
This is your controller captain. We've reached 6,900 feet. Go ahead and start flicking the sticks and mollywopping the back paddles.
You don't like back paddles? How about those rear buttons? We've tested almost 100 custom and premium controllers and we're only at the beginning. You need a thumbstick guide or tutorial on how to overclock your controller? Check out the controller playlist. Bing bong.
Controller captain out.
We're not going to spend too much time on the Scuf website. In case you didn't know, Corsair, the gaming PC company, owns Elgato with all their streamer gear, Origin with their pre-built PCs, Drop with, I don't know what that is, and then Scuf, the premium or pro controller company that's been around for ages. A couple of things to note about this controller right off Jump Street. It is only compatible with Windows 10 or 11. No Mac support, no console support. We are going to test some adapters or converters in this video to see if we can get it up and running with the wireless dongle, Jimmy McJerry rigged, MacGyvered into the back of a long stick of gum looking ass adapter from Brooks. 2 things I want to point out while we're on the Scuf website. The first is going to be the difference between the 2 models, as there is the Scuf Envision for $130 and then the Pro version for $180. And as you can see, just running up the list, running down the line, a lot of these key features are the same, and the controllers look very similar. The main difference being here is the Envision is a low latency wired connection, which you can do with the Envision Pro, but you also have the option of going wireless with a dongle, which we'll be testing later, but spoiler alert, you get the exact same speed as going wired on the PC, which is fantastic. And that is possible through Corsair's Slipstream technology, their little marketing gimmick name. They've all got them. Razer's got their Hyperspeed or Hyperwire or something like that. It's ultra fast wireless connectivity. They're proprietary shit. But there's 2 more big differences here. Not making a decision, Rick, is a big difference here. You've got standard full pull triggers. Well, that's a pro controller's standard or expected features that you're going to have some kind of a trigger lock or stop system. No, the hell you're not. Not on this $130 bad boy, you're not. And let me just tell you, the trigger stops on the Envision Pro are nice, tactile, mechanical mouse clicks. Absolute joy. That feature alone is worth the price difference. Smooth plastic on the back of this controller, as where this gamepad is wrapped in rubber haunches around the palm grips. So that's up to you to decipher if a $50 price gap is worth wireless connectivity, rubber grips, and mechanical mouse-like trigger stops that can be activated on the fly. For me, it's a no-brainer, abso-fucking-lutely. But a couple more notes before we dive into actually unboxing this plastic princess and getting down to business with it is, first of all, 45 feet of range is an insane range. I mean, you would never be that far from your gaming device, from your PC. After doing a bunch of R&D, research and development, listening to controller players, getting into the science of it, the weeds and whatnot, they ended up going with symmetrical PlayStation style thumbsticks as opposed to offset Xbox sticks. Me personally, I touched on it during my deep dive comparison of stock Xbox versus stock PlayStation controllers. It really doesn't matter whatsoever in the tiniest, slightest inkling. I go back and forth between Xbox and PlayStation controllers all the time, and I'm never once thinking, oh my god, these thumbsticks are weird being next to each other, or wow, these are funky with this up here and this one down here. It just doesn't matter. You get used to it in like 10 seconds. And it's going to get mentioned a few more times in the video, but Scuf has finally doubled their warranty from 6 months to a year.
Surprise, motherfucker.
As for the packaging, included accessories on Corsair's latest and greatest controller, the Envision Pro. I have envisioned that this video is going to get a dickload of views. Falling in line with previous Scuf controllers I've reviewed on the channel, it is going to have this carbon black and orange theme color, which has been Scuf's banner or theme colors for years, when they were using one of the worst paddle designs I've ever seen in my life. You know what I'm talking about if you're a longtime viewer of the channel. A couple of notable placards on the front. This is only for the PC platform, so no console support. We are going to diddle with some dongles or adapters later to see if we can force compatibility on any of those platforms. Slipstream is their marketing gimmick name for their wireless technology. You've got their catchphrase or slogan on the side, change your game. You really do need to change it up. I've been viewing your clips. I've been supervising from afar and I'm really not liking what I'm seeing, so why don't you just change up your game or get fired? Some key features on the side, 11 additional inputs, which to my recall is the most of any controller I have tested. In the near future, I'm going to be testing out a 6 rear button Battle Beaver custom, but I still think this will be more because of those Sax buttons, which are on the side, and that slew on the front, which basically gives you a damn keyboard. If you wanted to pause to read some of the key features, have at it. Throwing the outer box to the side with wanton disregard, you do have this sick, slick little hexagonal pattern that Scuf's been doing for the last couple of years since they did that little refresh to all their controllers, introducing the Reflex for PS5 and the Instinct for Xbox, two of my favorite gamepads. It's gonna tell your stupid ass what to do, pull here to open. I really appreciate that, because without that, I was just gonna leave this as is and just return the controller. Boom, busting the biscuits out of this box, revealing a little treat to us. Get started or debutes. You're debuting yourself. You're revealing yourself. Presentation aplenty. That has never been Scuf's problem. It's been the rear paddles and the shitty rubber that breaks apart after a couple of months, but their presentation has always been gorgeous. In fact, it used to be better back in the day because they weren't so environmentally friendly and they packaged more foam and cardboard and stuff in there. But this looks great. Little warning telling you to stop, halt, and recover yourself, then download the software because you need the latest version. This just lifts up and out of the way. You are going to have your dongle loosey-goosey. I'm assuming it's supposed to be in this little container right here. However, mine was popped all nilly-willy like this. No dust cover, but you do have orange on the plastic in there. Very nice. Very Scuf. Big old seam or crease right there. And this thing feels weightless. Little foam divider for your analog sticks to keep them safe in their travels, as this doesn't have any magnetic Hall effect thumbsticks. I am genuinely so excited for this review. I am giddy, shaking right now. I might as well have a gimbal because I am just a giddy little schoolgirl right now. This gamepad, I've been looking forward to it for a long time, since it was announced, actually. Okay, we got a couple of peely stickers here. Slow and steady wins the race. I was hoping it would just go all the way around the outside in one piece. That'd be so satisfying, but it's going to break off into a bajillion pieces. Also stays attached to my hand like a clingy ex-girlfriend. That is just not fun. Cool, so it's just those three pieces. One on each palm grip and one down the center on that 5-button suite. The G buttons for my gangstas, for my Google, my Gmail. 3.5mm headphone jack, starting to become extinct on controllers. Some of them are doing away with it. Once you've gotten through this top layer, or the upper decker, if you will, you've got some more treats in the bottom. You've got your accessories inside box, pretty long rectangular joint. Then you've got this smaller one over here. You don't know what's in here yet. Silica gel packet. Make sure you dispose of that properly, and then your safety, compliance, and warranty information. This tiny box has a small foam block with a couple of additional Sax. These side buttons over here, which actually can be removed. My initial impression was quite good for these. I liked them a lot. The large box will have your USB-C cable, identical to what Scuf has been packing with their controllers for the last few years, with one exception. Yes, it is still braided, 10 foot. No dust covers on the USB-A and C end. Tons of branding, as you do have this little hexagonal pattern to match your controller, which I really love. Theme color of orange, but what you're going to notice is a little bit different here, other than this shell pry tool, is that you now have an adapter USB-A to C, which is wonderful to see as this is for PC specifically. So if you have ports that are faster, USB-C, Gen, whatever the hell, by the time this video goes out, the fastest USB ports possible, then you're probably going to want to go USB-C to C. And hopefully you don't lose any speed with that adapter in comparison to going directly USB-C to C cable. Then you're going to have two very different included thumbstick caps. So the pre-installed Johns are a couple of short concaves, and I do mean short. They feel shorter than a stock controller, which is already very poquito. However, with that pry tool, you can lift the front faceplate off, which you don't even need the pry tool. I'm just doing it with my fingernail. Then you can pry these suckers off. They just lift straight up, but it does take a good deal of force. You have your potentiometer thumbstick modules in there. Don't you ever give me stick drift. Don't you ever do it. Nice close-up of the stock hex grade. Hello? Can you autofocus for the good people, please? Then putting those stalkers aside and never touching them again.
Never bring it up again.
And I am going to be using these included options, as you do have a mid-rise dome and a high-rise dome, which I will be using on the left and respectively right thumbsticks. These are the exact same thumbstick caps that Scuf has been using the last few years, which is a good thing. They're rubber or silicone compound, very grippy while being a lot more durable than their older compound, which used to break apart after the first few months. And that was on not only their thumbstick caps, but also around the palm grips of their controllers as well. I completely forgot my dog was in here with me. She's like so quiet, just passed out. These are officially called Sax, S-A-X buttons. So the pre-installed joint's pretty short, almost flush with the side. Nice tactile click, but you do have a couple of options here. To get those on and off, the easiest method is to remove the faceplate first. Then you can get a fingernail underneath the Sax buttons. You can use that pry tool, but you don't really need to. The Sax buttons actually do take an insane amount of force to get them off, especially the first couple of times while they're still kind of brittle with those clips in there. They'll get more broken in over time. We've seen this a bunch with teardowns or disassemblies of controllers on the channel. Separating the front faceplate and rear shell, things like that get more easy easier over time. Keep in mind if you want to change out these anti-friction rings for a different color or the entire faceplate for a different graphic down the road when those are sold for this controller, that is exactly how you do it with the magnetized swappable faceplate. Both colorways of this controller look so gorgeous, and it was damn near a toss-up. However, I'm really glad I went with this white and light silver as opposed to the dark gray and orange, caution orange if you will, which I think looks fantastic, but I already have two Scuf gamepads with that colorway, and this looks something sensual. I did mention earlier there is two colorways, they both look phenomenal, and while I prefer the shape of the optional thumbsticks, I really do prefer the gray appearance of the stalkers, the pre-installed ones, so if these could be gray as well, that'd be fantastic. But this is very reminiscent for me of the Xbox Prestige controller from Scuf, which I ranted and raved about how gorgeous that controller was, and this takes a lot of the design aspects of previous Scuf controllers that I really enjoyed and throws them into one controller without making them clash, looking like a Honda Civic Type R where everything's just over sculpted and a little bit too gaudy. This looks subtle, classy, and just, oh, a face I could stare at for hours. A rump too, and the side profile, good as well. 10 out of 10. Gorgeous controller. As for the ergonomics and comfort, this is by far the most comfortable Scuf controller I have used to date, and I've tried them all. Everything from the Vantage back on the PlayStation 4, everything in between up until now. I've even got an Xbox 360 wired variant called the Beast, and this is by far the most comfortable. Scuf went with their own unique shape and shell design. I couldn't find the dimensions anywhere online, but I'm sure eventually they'll surface. It reminds me a lot of that kind of cocked out angle of the Impact, but at a lesser degree to where you don't have to dislocate your wrist to use it, which is good. But then you've got this nice soft touch faceplate, which is removable of course, so if you want to swap it out for a different color down the road, you can, and they're all going to have this nice buttery soft touch rubberized material, which feels really good on your palms. And then around on backside you have these rubberized grips, which are the least comfortable of the current Scuf lineup, so less soft and supple and squishy and comfortable on your hands as the Instinct for Xbox and the Reflex for PS5. This PC specific version, the Envision over here, the rubber grips are much harder, which means they'll probably be a lot more durable in the long run, won't break down over time. They're not as comfortable on the hand. They're not that soft, suede-like rubber on your hand. It's kind of like, okay, that's better than hard plastic, but it's a little rough. Then you get to the rear buttons, which of course have their own section. We'll get into the intricacies of binding them and how they perform. However, they don't cut negatively into comfort at all because they're pretty much flush with the rear shell. Also, it must be noted that you have access to these Sax buttons on the side. Perfect access to those at all times. And when I get to the bumpers and trigger section, I'll go into a little bit more detail about what I'm about to mention here, but you can cover both the bumpers and triggers with just your index finger, and you don't need to slide it upward and downward. You just put it in the middle of both, and you can roll your index finger back and forth and actuate the bumpers and triggers. Ergonomics and comfort are going to be a 9 out of 10. It would be a perfect score. However, like I mentioned, these rubber grips aren't the softest, most supple things in the world, but they should be more durable in the long run. And the next section coming up is build quality, so that should come into play positively. As for the build quality of the Envision Pro, which I'm assuming is almost identical to the Envision wired version because they are damn near the same controller except you have a wireless chip on board the Pro, and these phenomenal trigger stops, and these rubber grips. The last three controllers I've tested from Scuf, this one included, have really reassured me that Corsair is doing a better job of the quality control than Scuf was previously experiencing with all their Pro controllers, which would disintegrate in people's hands, even within the warranty period, which is only 6 months, but a lot of times they simply wouldn't honor them, or it would take forever to get a replacement out to you. Not to mention, at the time, they didn't sell any replacement parts on Amazon, which now they do for the small stuff like swappable thumbstick caps, and actually, a lot of their Scuf accessories are on Amazon. This controller feels incredibly structurally sound. Everything you press has a nice mechanical tactile click. Overall feels incredibly solid. The only thing I don't like is this little gloss section down here. I guess this falls more into cosmetics. It's not really a build quality concern. Other than the fact it is a very weird crease, as near the middle it's almost completely sealed, and then near the edges it's opened up more, which is kind of funky, but nothing to really concern yourself with. Lastly, these plastics back here that are all gray, so not the rubber grips and obviously not the soft touch faceplate, but this area here feels and looks incredibly cheap. However, you don't really feel that when you're normally holding the controller. As you can see, you're covering those rubber grips. The only exception to that is when you extend out to press these inner buttons, tips of your middle fingers will brush against this pretty cheap slick plastic. That is an ode to my childhood, a little nod of the hat to aisle 6 of Toys R Us. That was the Transformers and Beyblades aisle, I believe. Tech decks as well. You need a grade on this bad boy, don't you? But it seems like Corsair has pulled Scuf out of the trenches of broken gamepads. I'm gonna go ahead and give perceived build quality on this new Envision a 9 out of 10. Repeat, a 9 out of 10. As for the D-pad or direction buttons, I am a big fan of the Envision's D-pad. You do have this hybrid, so you have a bit of a 4-point and then a wheel in there as well. Pretty much identical to what you get on a stock Xbox Series controller. The only difference is when you press it down, you will immediately notice that instead of a membrane switch, so a rubber plunger mechanism under there that feels a little bit squishy and mushy. You have these nice tactile, clicky mechanical switches, which aren't obnoxiously loud. I'd like if they were just a skosh quieter, but they're not offensive. And if you have a headset on or you're blaring your surround sound, you're not going to hear that. Roll-offs are an absolute joy, as there is 8 distinct gates or steps, so not a 4-way D-pad where you have to share down and right in order to get that diagonal input. There is actually a separate distinct gate, which are instantaneous to fire off because they're micro switches. Also, fitment is pretty good. There's no side-to-side play or wiggle, and there's just the slightest gap between the faceplate and that D-pad, which is surprising because it's a removable faceplate. Fitment's very nice. Plastics Corsair went with is very slick and slippery, but it is what it is. But overall, I'm a big fan of this D-pad. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Repeat, an 8 out of 10. As for the face or action buttons, I've tried a lot of mechanical switches on controllers throughout the last 3 to 5 years, and this is my favorite to date. You have a nice resistance, nice tactile click, instantaneous rebound, and when I say these things are instant, I mean instant. These are probably 0. God knows what millimeters instantaneous. Also, cosmetically, I will say they look gorgeous with this white variant. Spacing is very reminiscent of a stock controller. However, sizing, these look a little bit smaller. They definitely feel smaller on the finger as well. I'm going to give these face or action buttons a 10 out of 10. I love these things. Now, as for the accessory button suite, this controller is absolutely loaded to the gills, as you have 11 additional buttons, and a lot of those are going to fall into this accessory button category, such as the Sax buttons and the G-unit buttons down here, G1 through G5. My younger audience did not get that reference. G-unit! These G buttons are tactile and clicky despite the fact they are not mechanical. I'm pretty sure they're just a normal little plastic button in there, but they do feel nice. The profile switch button is the only one I have a little bit of a gripe with because it's a little bit hard to hit. You have to get your tip of your finger in there, or even a fingernail if you've got big old hands. Long. As the thing is flush with the rear shell and kind of small. No complaints with the power button though, as that is raised a little bit further. The pause and select, or pause and options buttons I should say, work perfectly. And then you had the center section, which is completely smooth, feels buttery smooth on the fingers like it's suede or something. 3.5mm headphone jack, always a treat. USB-C port, and it's also not sunken in super far to where you have to use a really thin, low profile USB-C cable. You can use any of them pretty much. And then you have a toggle on the back for wired and wireless. I'm gonna give the accessory button suite a 10 out of 10. Repeat, a 10 out of the 10. It's got 11 additional buttons, dog. I can barely even count that high. As for the thumbsticks, analog sticks, joysticks, front niblets, giblets, doodads, whatever you want to call them, they're pretty damn sweet. The only thing that would make them a little bit more sensual is if they were magnetic HE Hall Effect sticks. Why did I say HE and Hall Effect? They don't have HE thumbstick modules. These are just the potentiometer joints that we've been knowing and not so much loving for the last 30-40 years that potentially could get sticked for you at any time. But having gotten that out of the way, they're pretty damn sweet. You do have these anti-friction rings around the outside of the thumbstick gate, so that's a smooth glide for you. Clicking down L3 and R3, tight and secure. Pretty darn good resistance with these thumbstick modules. A little bit more resistance as you're breaking zero, breaking away from that dead zone. And then once you get past that hump, that hurdle, then the resistance seems to decrease itself by about 30%. For most, that probably wouldn't even be noticeable. I notice it because I'm the controller whisperer, and I had a conversation with this gamepad off camera, and it told me, hey, my thumbsticks, they're a little tight when you first break me loose, but then I get a little loosey-goosey near the outside of the thumbstick gates. So that's what's happening there. But they feel great. Also, these thumbstick caps are phenomenal. I raved about them on the previous Scuf controllers, and these are a direct carryover. I just realized for the last segment I have my camera about 2 feet closer than I usually do. You're basically sitting on my lap. I wasn't complaining, but it might have been a little bit awkward for you. As for KontrolFreek cap compatibility, we are going to do this the smart way and remove our thumbstick caps prior to us installing these KFs. And we are going to test compatibility with both the pre-installed concaves, these gray joints, and the optional in-the-box dome sticks. Starting with the dome sticks, we have some white Galaxies for PlayStation 4 and 5, the no red Infernos for the Switch Pro, not gonna happen. Some black Omnis for the Xbox One and Series controllers, no sir. So nothing wants to work with the domes. However, the pre-installed concaves, we're gonna go for those red Infernos for the Switch. They fit perfectly, snap right on. You can get them to rotate, but you'd have to literally pinch them and twist them, which you're not gonna be doing when you're just normally using them. So these work perfectly. PS4 and 5 variant, a little bit loose and wiggly, more so than the Switch Infernos. Damn, and then the black Omnis were a struggle to get on. I had to force them on, and it kind of looks like it bent the ever-living hell out of the thumbstick cap. Not damaging it or anything, just pushing it down. It's soft, squishy rubber, but they fit really good, and it's not rotating or anything. It's on there. So all three of them work, but I'd recommend the Switch Pro variant. And that's with the concave sticks. Nothing works with the dome bad boys. Over here in a fine little program called Gamepad Tester, not even a program, it's actually a website. We've covered it on the channel. It's good, clean fun for the family. We are listed by name as a Scuf Envision Pro controller, as we are professionals and we have a controller in our hand. The horizontal and vertical axes are represented presented not with little radio wheels, which I'll try and get for us in just a toke here in just a sec. But as you can see, these suckers are jittering around a little bit. They're sporadically sputtering. Well, never mind. This is why they pay me the big bucks, but not really. They throw me the scraps, the little breadcrumbs under the table, and I feast on those. Rewazd actually does have support for this controller. I had to update it to the latest and greatest and also update the controller. So update the controller, update Rewazd, do a little spin around, shake down the town, Charlie Brown's, dust your knees off, and you're in it to win it. And we're in X input mode now. And we get a visual representation of these thumbsticks, which might not be a good thing for us. Clean fun. Every time I move them to and fro and then I stop, they snap back to a different value. But I will say in gameplay, there's no stick drift. That's good. Not the tautest things in the world. I'm slip sliding all over the road, but they didn't offend me in gameplay. There's no out of the box stick drift or anything like that. Let's test the circularity to get that accuracy. Don't puke, must be a fluke. Let's run another one. I'm not sure where Corsair is sourcing these thumbstick modules, these potentiometer thumbstick modules, but they are... I just figured out what's going on here. I am running Rewazd in the background, so that's probably smoothing out the thumbsticks. Let's double check on that. Very typical of potentiometer thumbstick modules. Very on par, very on point. Not bad, not good, just mid, just meh. As for these bumpers and triggers, I gotta loop them in together because they work in conjunction. I've never seen a design like this because the bumpers are so streamlined and stripped down. They are a little bit slippery, I will say. Both of these. It'd be nice if there was some stippling or texture on here. But because they're so tiny, you just rest your index finger in the middle and you're able to roll off. Roll forward for the bumpers, roll back for the triggers, especially if you have the trigger stops on as their instantaneous mouse click. And it just feels phenomenal. I'm gonna give the trigger and bumper suite a 10 out of 10. You do have these on-offs for the trigger stops, which I think are phenomenal. You have a nice resistance with that analog squeeze. So if you're using this for racing games, you're good to go. Snap these on, which you can do in gameplay, just holding the controller normally once you get used to it. And these become buttery smooth. I just wish they'd use a little bit of stippling on here. That's the only thing. Because of that, I'm gonna give the trigger and bumper suite a 9 out of 10. As for the rear buttons or back paddles, or just Cookus inputs, if you will, because we're starting to see other shapes out there, like the half domes from the Edge and whatever these pipes are from EX Knight. And then there's these things over here. Scuf has well broken away from that really clumsy paddle design they were using during the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One era. And on the Envision, it's using a very similar system to the Reflex for PS5 and the Instinct for Xbox, which I'm a fan of both. So you can kind of see where this is probably going. How I want to naturally grip this controller, I can press these inner buttons by squeezing inward. And if I extend my middle fingers out, I press these outer buttons. The only thing I don't like, they sound a little bit different. These outer buttons are membrane and these inner buttons sound like they're mechanical. Throws your brain for a little bit of a loop, but doesn't really affect your gameplay or the way you actuate them. And these are your steps for remapping the rear paddles, although let's get realistic. You know I'm going to show you how to do that firsthand. Binding these rear buttons is quick, easy, and happens on the fly with no PC software necessary. Use this profile switch button to toggle through the different profiles, which will be indicated by the colors on the G buttons. Then when you get to the profile you want, for example, I want green, hold down the profile button for a few seconds until the G buttons begin to flash. Then simultaneously hold one of the rear buttons and one of the face or action buttons, or D-pad that you would like bound. So we'll hold A to this button right here. You will get a vibration or rumble in the controller as well as white flashing of lights. Well, I guess it doesn't really flash, it just goes solid white. And as you can see, it stays in remapping mode, which is great because you can quickly rattle off all 4 of the bindings. Bam, bam, done. That's all 4 of the buttons. Then press the profile button again and you're back in normal and playable mode. Very quick and easy. Just like the Instinct and Reflex, these rear buttons take a lot of getting used to because you're going to be putting your middle finger right down the middle and being able to wedge your finger in to press both of these buttons. But if you're trying to hit multiple inputs at a time, so an outer button here and an inner button here, it's a little more confusing for your brain than having a controller with 4 spaced out buttons, at least in my personal opinion. But this is a damn near perfect rear button design. I'm going to give it just a 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10. Also absolutely worth a mention, you can actually remove the paddles, just the inner 2 though, not the outer 2, which I thought was kind of funky, and I will never be removing the paddles because I like all 4 of them. I'm going to use all 4 of them. It just makes sense mathematically. You got 4 face or action buttons, 4 reasons I shouldn't have to take my thumbs off the thumbsticks. So I'm going to be utilizing all these bad boys like the good Lord intended, but if you want to remove them, you take that little pry tool, snap these bad boys off. So let's talk about these G keys, this additional row of 5 buttons that are labeled G1 through G5 on the bottom of the controller. These remappable inputs, they're fantastic because instead of having to run a third-party program like Rewazd in the background where you can pretty much run your stream, switch between scenes and OBS, launch applications, mute your microphone that's on a boom arm, not your little headset mic in the game, but your content creator big flashy mic on a boom arm. Basically any Windows control that you can think of can be be bound to those G keys, and it's fantastic that that's built directly into the iCUE software for this controller. You don't need to install something like Rewas, which isn't free, by the way. It's $7 if you want to unlock all the goodies. So those are pretty damn sick, and they also switch with the profiles. Each time you swap a profile and the color changes, these are also being affected as well. As for these Sax buttons, these two additional inputs on the side, I was unsure where I was going to squeeze these in at the review. Technically, I graded them during the accessory button suite, but I want to talk about them a little bit more, and I think after the G button suite, we should talk about the Sax buttons because it's more additional inputs on this controller, and coincidentally, more additional inputs that I like. I like the G buttons because you can do all your Windows stuff in there, switch scenes and OBS, Windows specific, PC specific stuff. These Sax buttons on the side, these are for straight up gaming, and it's awesome that they have the option to have a block out plate to where you have these deactivated if you don't like them, but I've never accidentally hit them a single time in gameplay, and when I want to hit them, is just kind of squeeze in like this, just apply pressure on the sides. You can even straighten out your finger if you want, but you don't need to do that. You just press inward, and you get these nice mechanical switches on the side. They're fantastic. I love them in gameplay. Granted, I usually just bind them to left and right on the D-pad. Yeah, these are really sweet. As for the software suite, the application to control this controller, it is Corsair iCUE, which is very easy to get, and also a pretty good application. We're already off to a better start than Asus Armory Crate, and I must mention that it's funky that Razer makes PC peripherals such as keyboards, mice, headsets, but then when it comes to their controllers, Razer has like a different app for all of their controllers. It's frustrating. 2 stars in the iOS store. You can pinch the sides in order to resize. I love that. You can also maximize. Not really at all. That's some trickery right there. It full screens all right, but it's mostly just a gray border for you. The only visual area is right here. Well, if that's the case, then we'll just stare at my cool wallpaper then. So we've got some system stats about my PC over here. Don't pay attention to that. We already know what I'm running because we built this rig on the channel. You and I, we did it together. You were holding the screwdriver. Now, I will say cosmetically, it would be cool if it knew that I had the white variant of this controller instead of the gray one, but that's a little nitpicky. Coming up here to the cog icon, you are going to have a couple of updates to both the firmware and software. This is going to be for the application, but as soon as you install it, it'll be up to the most latest and greatest version, then the actual controller itself and the receiver. You also have a toggle here for automatic download, which I recommend keeping ticked. Then unfortunately in firmware updates, whenever I hit check for updates, it says update failed. It won't really give me any more information. Clicking browse for firmware just opens up this interface to browse your PC in case you've got a little folder snaked away and you've got the actual driver for it. Also, there are third-party plugins in here which you can install, but that's not for the controller necessarily. That's just for this Corsair iCUE program. It means nothing to us. But your profiles are going to be over here. You have your default, and then you have 1, 2, and 3. You can right-click and rename these bad boys. Copy them if you want to duplicate a profile and then just modify it slightly. And you can add profiles, color coding them as well. Don't worry about murals. That's going to be RGB stuff. Dashboard is going to be specs about your PC, so don't worry about that. Home is the only tab you need to worry about. We have our Scuf Envision Pro controller, which is plugged in. Mappings is going to be just that, your button bindings. You have some presets over here. Shooter, Battle Royale, Racing, great. We're going to make our custom ones over here. So awkwardly enough, you cannot bind or change the binding of A or B. That is always going to be select or confirm, if you will, and then go back, or, ew, I didn't mean to do that, which I think is kind of smart. That way you can still get through menus and interfaces, even if you really janked yourself up with the bindings. But for some people, that might piss them right off. But you can bind everything else, the 2 Sax buttons, the 5 G buttons, your 4 rear buttons. In order to do that, hit the plus over here, select what you want, and then bind it over here. So it's not the sexiest looking interface, but it does work to bind the buttons. Hardware mappings. It looks like button mappings again, but it's hard and you wear it. Honestly, I have no idea, but I'm going to learn about it. I'm going to educate myself and I'll come back. I'll get back to you on it. But you know what I damn well do know about? That RGB lighting, because it adds frames per second to the rig. By default, you have this effect, the watercolor spectrum. However, I'm going to right click that bad boy and I'm going to delete it. Oh man, my RGB's gone now. But I'm going to hit plus over here. Oh, I just want a static color, man. A lot of clicking, but if you just diddle around with the program, you'll figure out what you're doing. There we go. I got it teal now. Triggers, you are going to be able to set up your minimum and maximum squeeze, which I have the trigger locks or stops engaged. So right now it's an on off, but there we go. Now we've got that linear squeeze. Look at me modulate that. And you can also set up different sensitivity curves for those as well, or response curves, if you will, which is fantastic. You know where else there's going to be response curves? With the Thiggity Thumbsticks as well. And you're going to get a real-time representation as to what I'm doing. I love that. Just like in Gamepad Tester. Now, I always recommend linear across the board, the same input value. However, dynamic, whoa, you got a little S-curve in there. Watch out. Exponential, looking like a half pipe. You're about to catch some air off that bitch and do a kickflip. Aggressive, little hump, little Wednesday right here. And then custom, you have these 5 dibbly dots where you can drag and drop and set it up. Linear, you keep all the guesswork out of it. It's probably what you're used to on thumbsticks. Vibration, you do have control of the left and right modules, and you can link them up as well, which I recommend you do. It'd be kind of weird to have like 60% on one, 100 on the other, but there is no vibration mode motors and the triggers, something to note. And they do have vibration presets. I guess they're assuming for a shooter, you want the vibration completely deactivated, so you can do that here. Then in device settings, you'll get this little pop-up where if you've come unpaired from the dongle, which should just be paired out of the box, but if it isn't, you can pair it up here. You've got some settings here to eke out a little more battery life. And if you screwed things up, you can reset to default. I'm a pretty big fan of the IQ software, and I'd give it an 8 out of 10. It is a solid application. I do declare. I had to do some straight up black magic voodoo trickery off camera to get this sucker to work. That's a fluke, 10 milliseconds. That's probably being thrown off by that one major outlier, which is one majorly large or small number that's not going to agree with the rest of its comrades, usually at the top. Yep, right there, because I got off to a slow start, just like I did in life. Let's run it again. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Whoa, she's going on her own. That's not good. Yowza, what a crazy test there. An average of 2.9, but with 78 outliers. If you scroll through the numbers manually, you're going to see a lot of 0.8, 0.9s, a lot of 3.0s, a lot of scrolly McScrolly. It's going to make sense that this is going to average out to around 2 milliseconds of input lag or delay on a 500 hertz stock clock while going wired. I will say the minimum and maximum a little bit further than I'd like to see, meaning not a very consistent connection. Also jitter high as shit as well, and that was consistent on back-to-back pulls. How about wireless with that dongle? We are now untethered by wire. Whoop. Okay, already got ourselves a little outlier there. Let's try this again. It's just going without me. It's just starting without me. Okay, cool. Saw an autopilot. Well, it's already spoiling my fun. We're 8 milliseconds. There we go. Phenomenal. So it looks like we're getting the exact same speeds. 2 milliseconds on a 500 hertz stock clock. Let's run it again. Okay. Yeah, for sure. So whether you go wired or wireless with this gamepad, you are going to be enjoying 2 milliseconds of input lag or delay on PC, which is the only platform it's for. But I'm trying to get buck wild with a little bit of overclocking, so why don't you hop on board with it? Let's overclock the controller. Over here in the Lord of Mice overclocking software to do a little bit of, well, overclocking. That's what the program's for, silly. In this drop down, if you select all and expand the child name, you are going to see a Scuf audio, blah, blah, blah. Here's the keyword HID compliant game controller, not overclocked on the stock clock for an estimated 1 millisecond of input lag or delay. Yeah, it was around 2. Pretty freaking fast, but let's overclock it. This is wired, by the way. We are going to overclock the dongle. Go for that wireless overclock in just a sec. Unplug, replug, bam, overclock, 1000 hertz. Let's measure it. Again, running on its own. Why not? No benefit to overclocking wired. Let's try the dongle. Now that we've unplugged the controller, switch that toggle in the back to wireless mode, plugged in the dongle, hit the power button on the front. Sounds like a lot of steps. It's really not though. We just went from wired to wireless and now it's showing that we are not overclocked. Back on that stock clock. Let's overclock it. Now instead of unplugging, since we're already wireless, you can either hold down the power button, but the easiest thing to do here, since you have that toggle on the back, is just flip it to the wired mode. It instantly cuts power. Hey, turn it back on. Boom. And now we are overclocked. Let's measure it and see if there was any results from that. Okay, it's already running on its own. That's terrifying. Controller has a mind of its own.
I swear, sometimes I think these toys have a mind of their own.
Also, no benefit to overclocking the wireless dongle, and it's a little bit sloppy-toppy consistency-wise. The minimum and maximum kind of far from each other. Jitter higher than I'd like to see, but it is definitely a 500 hertz polling rate, which is going to net you 2 milliseconds of input lag or delay when you're going wireless with the dongle or wired with the cable. I come as the bearer of bad news. Don't shoot the messenger, please. I tried every converter and adapter that I have to try and get this bad boy up and running on the PlayStation 5, Xbox Series S and X, and Nintendo Switch, and none of them have support for this controller. Since it doesn't have a Bluetooth card on board, going the Bluetooth route was off the table, but I tested both tethering with the USB-C cable or going wireless with the dongle, like this with the XE2 for PS5 and the XB2 for Xbox, and even after updating the firmware on everything, the controller, the adapters, still nothing. It's a PC-only controller. Starting with the con shortcomings or limitations, the fact that this is definitely 100% a PC-only controller. Windows, in fact, just no Macintosh support, no Android, no iOS, PS5, Xbox Series, even with adapters or converters. I tried them all. Really sucks because there's a pros list that's going to be lengthy because I love this thing and I can only use it on PC. For now, I am hopeful that down the road, Brook Accessories or maybe another company is going to come out with an update to one of their converters that allows this to be used on a console, either wired or with the dongle. That'd be so sick. Another con is that I can't find any information about the onboard battery, the milliamp hour, estimated battery life, charge time, any of that. I did find a couple of articles, one on Reddit and one just floating around stating anywhere between 5 and 12 hours. One guy was saying he gets between 5 to 6 and another article was saying between 10 and 12. So battery life is an absolute mystery with this controller as of now because I haven't been able to kill it, so I can't attest to jack shit for us. That is what the long-term owner's review is all about, where I can deep dive into some of the reliability, things like battery life, and has it disintegrated in my hand. Another little con is that there's no included carrying case since there are some swappable loose bits. You have the wireless dongle, then you have the little Sax buttons, which do have their own little foam block, but it'd be nice if there was a carrying case to keep everything together. Although when we get to the pros, I'm going to talk about the actual pricing of this controller. Price to performance, bang for buck, tremendous value here, even without a carrying case. That's really all I got. I was trying to provide a critique and come up with some shortcomings, some cons, some limitations of this controller, and that's really all I've got as of now. This is a pretty damn sweet gamepad. On to the pros. I'm just going to rattle them off because there is a shitload. First of all, the Omron face buttons, fantastic. The 2 swappable thumbstick options, great. Anti-friction rings, good. The swappable faceplate not only feels great, but the fact that you can swap it for other graphics, or if this one gets damaged or something, that's fantastic. Cosmetically, I think this controller looks gorgeous. It's also freakishly comfortable. These G buttons are stupid cool because you can assign them to Windows functions. The trigger locker stop system is absolutely phenomenal, and the input lag or delay at 2 milliseconds both wired and wireless is fast. These Sax buttons are an absolute joy, and if you don't like them, there's blockout plates where you can just block those off and never have to worry about hitting them. I like their implementation of these on the Vantage 2 for PS4, and these are the next evolution of those buttons. These rear buttons are phenomenal. It's kind of weird that these inner buttons are mechanical and these outer ones are membrane, but they're great. The fact you can rebind them on the fly or within the software, and they're hella comfortable. The inner 2 are removable. These are sick. So rolling right into the verdict, I can't think of a controller that offers this kind of price to performance, bang for buck, or sheer value when it comes to the PC side of the house, to be 110% honest. Yeah, you can spec out a custom controller from AIM, HyperCinch, Battle Beaver, Mega Mods, and with converters or adapters, you'd be able to use that controller on a multitude of different consoles and platforms, which is the major Achilles heel or limitation of this controller, is the fact that it's a one platform, one trick pony. And are you gonna pony up the dough, $180 for the Pro variant to only play on PC? Yeah, probably. If you're a PC player, that's your dedicated platform. Abso-fucking-lutely. People ask me all the time, what is your favorite controller for PC? This, as of now, is my favorite high-end controller for PC. If you're on the budget side of the house, take a look at the GameSurge G7. It's $40. Got 2 remappable rear buttons, rubber grips, 1000 hertz polling rate with the latest update. Gotta update that firmware. And it's got mechanical clicky face buttons. Or you could go with the G7 SE, which is Hall effect sticks, which I wish this had. And the fact Scuf doubled their warranty from 6 months to a year means they're listening to the controller community. They're listening to the gamers that are buying their controllers. They're customers making revisions and giving us better controllers, which is really all you could ask for from these companies. And a final note I want to close out on, it's really surprising that it's Scuf, Corsair over here, that's offering this damn good of a value, considering just a couple of years ago they were giving you a 6-month warranty on a $230 controller, and now you got a $180 controller with a 1-year warranty. Oh, how the turntables have turned. And component by component, this is just a better controller than what they've been offering. Unfortunately, this controller is now sold out as of making this video on the Scuf website, and they also don't sell these in any third-party vendors like Amazon or Walmart. But what you can do is sacrifice your dignity and your email to get marketed to sideways, up, and across by Corsair, but eventually you're going to get that email you've been waiting for saying, hey, these are back in stock. Dogpile in there and hope that you beat all the bots and scalpers and get one of these. Hey, it's not that bad. It's not like getting a PS5 locked in at launch. These are sold out as of currently. If you're interested in one of them, keep your peepers peeled on the Scuf website, because this is a fantastic PC gamepad. Gold tier, upper echelon, if you will. I've hyped you up enough, but you deserved it.
If you enjoyed the video, liking it helps it to get seen by more gamers. This information will reach and assist them as well, which in turn helps me grow this little channel, which I do greatly appreciate. Subscribe for more content like this. I cover news in the gaming community and industry, tutorials helping you get set up streaming and YouTubing, as well as honest gaming product reviews, keyboards, mice, headsets, controllers, mics, chairs, etc. There are some hefty exclusive discount codes found only in the description of my videos and only for the audience here at GamerHeaven. I have links to all my other platforms and socials in the description below. To get in touch with myself and the Stallions and Stallionettes of GamerHeaven, join the community Discord, and check me out at twitch.tv where I go live every other leap year on a blue moon if it falls into an odd calendar number, and my pH balance is on point. Just kidding, starting June I'm going to be live streaming a lot. Thanks for watching. This has been AK40 Kevin hosting GamerHeaven, and I'll see you tomorrow because I upload daily, all the time, 60% of the time, sometimes, most of the time. Peace.